My name is Sheila Lamb, and I'm with the Virginia SBDC Network. For those of you that are not familiar with our organization, the Virginia Small Business Development Center is a partnership program between the U.S. Small Business Administration, George Mason University, and local host institutions throughout Virginia. With 26 locations across the Commonwealth, we provide training and technical assistance to small businesses in their local communities. Our one-on-one advising services are available at no charge. Today's webinar, How to Manage Your WordPress Website, is presented by the Virginia SBDC Network. Please mark your calendars for the next webinar in our digital bootcamp series, Mobile Apps, How to Plan, Execute, and Launch, on October 9th. And I'll drop that registration link into the chat momentarily. We are recording today's presentation, and it will be posted on our website, virginiasbdc.org. Due to the large number of participants, everyone's microphone is muted and the chat feature is turned off. But if you have questions during the presentation, you can type those into the Q&A box and we will address them at the end of the session. We have also enabled the live transcript function, which you can show or hide via your own meeting controls. And now it is my pleasure to introduce our presenter for today's session, Cameron Nelson, CEO of Tenzing Startup Consultants. Cameron has over 20 years of experience in technology and is a senior tech consultant in Silicon Valley, helping Fortune 500 companies improve their digital marketing and e-commerce. At the same time, he also founded several tech companies, including a software as a service website for tree preservation and a blockchain platform for nonprofits. Cameron is accomplished in language, culture, has an MBA and MA. He believes new technology products have the ability to help shape our world for the better. Please join me in welcoming Cameron Nelson.
Thank you for the introduction. And hello, everybody. Welcome to this session on how to manage your WordPress website. Websites are becoming increasingly important for small businesses and startups to present your ideas to the world and indeed to sell your products online. In the session today, I'm going to be covering the main strategies of how to build your WordPress website and showing you a live demo of how you navigate the interface. I won't be able to get into detail on every single nuance of WordPress because there are lots of them. WordPress is a fairly complicated platform to build websites on, but I will be taking your questions at the end. So if you have questions about something I didn't cover in enough detail, please let us know in the Q&A box, and I'll be happy to answer as many of those as I can at the end of the presentation. So with that, let's jump right into it. We have 3 goals for the presentation today. The first goal is to discover what WordPress is and figure out if you should be using it for your business, because it's not the only option out there if you're looking to build your business website. And we're going to talk about the pros and the cons of it compared to some of the other alternatives. Secondly, we're going to look at Elementor, which is one of the more popular editing interfaces that comes prepackaged with WordPress, because I get asked a lot, well, how do I use Elementor? So in case you have that question, I am going to show some information about that to help you learn about Elementor. Third, I'm going to show you how to set up your WordPress website and start by finding your WordPress theme. And lastly, we're going to look at how you customize your WordPress website and put the content on the pages and be ready to launch your site so everybody can see it. First, let's talk a little bit about what is WordPress. What's the history behind WordPress? And indeed, should your business be considering using it? Not many people know that WordPress started a long time ago, about 12 years ago, as a way for people to create blogs. But it's evolved a lot since then into one of the more popular options for building websites. It's called a platform for building websites on because it gives you the interface and the tools that let you quickly build a website and you don't need to write any code. So if you're new to building websites, you're going to have some work to do to learn about the WordPress interface. This is typically the biggest stumbling block among small business owners that I talk to, is that they're just kind of overwhelmed with the buttons and where to click, and they're not sure what steps to take. And so that's why I'm focusing on those issues in the presentation today. There's a lot of benefits to using WordPress. I really do think it is the best website platform for about 90% of business owners out there, because WordPress is widely supported. So as a platform, the company behind or the team behind WordPress is constantly updating it to be compliant with the newest versions of iOS or Android or Windows or Mac OS. So you can be sure if you build your website on WordPress, it's going to be supported on any device your customer is using. Secondly, multiple users can contribute to your website and help you build it or maintain it. And that's just an option that's given for free with every WordPress website. So it's really nice. Third, you can choose your own website host to host the website. The host is just a computer or a server somewhere in the world that is hosting the files of your website, like the pages, the text, the images, and the videos, and serving those up to the visitors. The nice thing about choosing your own host is you can pick the cheapest option, or you can pick an option that has features you really need. And some popular options are Google or GoDaddy and some others. Now, other website building platforms that we'll talk about, like Wix, for example, or Squarespace, they don't give you the option to host elsewhere. So it's more limited. Next, WordPress offers a lot of plugins, which are really nice ways to add features and functions to your website above and beyond what your theme provided by default. Now, typically, if you're building a website and you want to add, a scrolling timeline of your company's history or something kind of unique like that, you would have had to hire a programmer to code that in with HTML and other coding languages. But WordPress offers plugins that can essentially do that for free, and you can do that yourself without coding. So it's really nice. Next is that WordPress is built with search engine optimization in mind. Search engine optimization is the technique of writing your website text and formatting it in a way that it appeals to search engines and they show your website in search results higher up. And this is very good for all businesses. And WordPress offers the basic SEO functionality included, so you already have some of that there and you can always optimize and get more advanced if you want, but that is a nice feature to have. The next benefit of using WordPress is that it has many customizable themes. You can think of a WordPress theme as a starting place for your website. It'll have colors and layouts and different page look and feels, so like a home page, an about page, a contact page, and you can essentially swap out their text and their images with your own. And it allows you to quite easily and quickly build a WordPress website. By using a pre-built theme, you're about 80% of the way done building your website right off the bat. Some themes are free, some things you pay a small one-time fee to buy, and I'll tell you a lot more about themes in a few more slides. And lastly, most web hosts offer a one-click install of the WordPress platform. So what this means is that if you decide you want to buy your domain name and host your website with GoDaddy, for example, GoDaddy during the setup process will ask, is this a WordPress website? And all you need to do is say yes. And that tells GoDaddy to install the WordPress kind of support library and the features that it needs, and it helps you get that set up. So you don't need to be a programmer or have any knowledge to install WordPress. The host will do it for you. So those are all the benefits, and I think they're a strong and compelling reason why any business owner should consider using WordPress. However, WordPress is not without its time commitment, and what I tell business owners who are starting is that plan on spending 2 to 5 hours per month just maintaining your website, which means there might be updates to plugins or your theme. You can install those. You might find bugs or typos, so you'll need to fix those as you go. And you also will need to budget some time for updating content. So you might have new products you want to list, new images, new text. And so there is a time commitment to maintain a WordPress website, which can be slightly higher than some alternatives. Now, if you don't have the ability or the inclination to learn and maintain a WordPress website, you can always hire someone like a professional website developer, a freelancer, and they can do most of these tasks for you for a small fee. And there's also a few other simpler website building platforms like Squarespace and Wix, which could be a better fit if you're looking for the most simple and streamlined experience possible, but without a lot of the features. So I think it's important to take a quick look at the different options for you. So first off, we have WordPress. And like I said, it has thousands of plugins, themes. It requires you to set up your own hosting account with Google, GoDaddy, or some other host. And so there are a few steps in getting that website set up. With Wix, it's kind of a more all-in-one platform. It more or less builds a website for you. It does the hosting right there for you. With Squarespace, it's also an all-in-one platform. It's a lot like Wix in a way that it gives you the hosting package built in, And these do cost a bit more, and we'll talk about the cost in a moment. But Squarespace is nice if you just want to drag and drop, and especially if you have an e-commerce site where you want to sell some physical or digital products, then you might not need a full-blown WordPress website in some cases. Wix or especially Squarespace might be a nice option for you. And lastly, Shopify is a good platform for building e-commerce websites on as well. It gives you a lot of tools to manage your inventory, your sales, look at your trends and analytics, and it also offers integration if you have a physical store with a credit card swiping machine, a point of sale system. You can integrate your Shopify sales experience online with your inventory there in person, and so it'll do it all for you. So these are the four main competing options for you to build your website on now in 2025. I've already talked about the pros and the cons of WordPress. Pricing of WordPress is the software is always free. You don't pay for WordPress, the platform itself. The only thing you pay for is the host that you choose to host your website. And that's usually a monthly or annual fee. Now, Bluehost is one of the cheapest and one of the better options out there, around $6 a month. There's also one called SiteGround. There's also, as I mentioned, Google and GoDaddy, and literally hundreds of others. So you have a lot of options there, and you can pick the one that works best for you. Now, the pros of Wix are that it is very user-friendly, and it does have a lot of templates like WordPress to get that initial look and feel of your website. It includes the hosting. Now, the cons are that it's a lot less flexible than WordPress. You can't switch templates after you pick one, and you have limited features to customize your website if you decide that Wix is not having features that you need to help you sell your product or be successful. Wix is more expensive. Plans start with, there's a free plan, but it won't work for most businesses because it does restrict a lot of options you have on the website. So plan on spending at least $14 a month or more, depending on features you'll need with Wix. Now, moving on to Squarespace, it also offers really nicely designed templates to give you a modern, clean feel of your website. It's less flexible than WordPress. It's more like Wix, whereas you just have less features available to you to expand your website in the future. In fact, I know a lot of business owners in Virginia, probably 5 in the last year or so, who have started with Wix or Squarespace websites, and after a few years have struggled to really get their website to work the way they need it to, and have had to switch to WordPress. And switching to WordPress basically means starting from scratch. So you want to go into this with good knowledge of what level of website complexity and features you'll need, and think about the future. Think about 3 to 5 years where your business might expand into. And that's the key reason why WordPress is good, because it is very flexible and expandable. So the price of Squarespace starts at about $12 a month for the simplest edition. But really, if you're a business and you're going to sell online, plan on spending $18 a month or more to get those features included. So much more expensive than WordPress. Now, as I mentioned, Shopify is a good option if you're just solely focused on selling products and you're not so much trying to build a brand. Shopify websites can look very nice, but they're really e-commerce focused. Now, the cons for Shopify is the fees can be quite high and they really add up as you need new features. So one feature, for example, is if you want to have a subscription feature, so maybe you want to mail out a box every month with your products and you want a subscription, you have to pay a lot for that every month. So there's these add-ons to Shopify. You can expect to spend between $30 and even up to $300 a month for a Shopify website. So comparing all these options, WordPress is the most flexible, it is the cheapest, and the only real con with it that I ever see is that it has the steeper learning curve. So hopefully by the end of today's presentation, you will be more familiar with WordPress and you won't feel like that learning curve is a big hurdle. Now, AI is certainly changing how people build websites in 2025. Wix has integrated very heavily an AI assistant that you type some ideas and it kind of builds a website for you. WordPress also has AI integrated now, so you can instantly generate text for your website. You can automatically translate your text into different languages using AI. And these features are all built into the WordPress kind of core package. So any website built on WordPress will have access to these features. And it does help compared to the experience several years ago when really you had to think of all of your text from scratch and write everything yourself. It could be very time consuming. Now, I want to talk a little bit about Elementor. If you start building a website in WordPress, you will have different interfaces of how you edit the pages and edit the content on the pages. Elementor is one of the most popular interfaces out there, and it's a very nice one to use. It's very simple and streamlined. And you might or might not have Elementor as your default editing system on your WordPress website. It just depends on the theme you pick. Some theme developers include Elementor, some include something else. Elementor is probably included in 50% or more of the WordPress websites. And so here at the bottom, you see some of these ways you can use Elementor. You can upload and install the Elementor plugin to your WordPress website. And if that's not included by default, and then you have an option to edit with Elementor. And by editing with Elementor, all you do is you can drag and drop elements like a text box or an image right onto your website and kind of position it how you want. And again, you don't need to do any coding of the website. It's just a visual editing interface. It's very nice. And if anybody has more questions about Elementor specifically, feel free to ask me in the comments. Here's a screenshot of how Elementor interface works. On the example here on the left, you have several different elements you can add. These are just the most common ones most websites have. A heading, a text box, an image. You can include a video. You could put a button, of course, if you want a button as a link to go to another page. And all of these are on a drag and drop interface that's very easy to use. Also, by using Elementor, it has what's called a responsive design. So if you want to see how your web page looks on a tablet, like an iPad or a smartphone, you can just click a button in Elementor and it'll resize your entire website to fit that form factor. And you can see immediately if you have an image that is maybe cutting off the edge of the screen or something not lining up right. So this is very nice for someone who's not really technically inclined to see how their website is working on multiple types of devices. A question I get quite often is, what about security? How can I make sure my WordPress website is secure? Let's talk a little bit about why that's important. WordPress powers, at last count, at the end of 2024, about 43% of websites on the internet. So that's a huge amount. It is more than any of those competitors like Wix or Squarespace that I talked about. So because it has so many websites built on this platform, it is a target for hackers. Now, a secure website will help protect your business's reputation, your user data, and ensure, obviously, that your website stays online and that it's uninterrupted service. So what are some of the things you should do to improve the security of your WordPress website, or at least to be knowledgeable about it? The first thing is updates. So as WordPress, the platform itself, it undergoes periodic updates. I'd say every quarter or twice or three times a year, there'd be an update to WordPress. By keeping WordPress itself updated, you can be sure that the team behind it is rectifying any security problems that have been found. And also any plugins that you install might have updates, and it's always good to update those for the same reasons. Also, your theme, which again is the look and feel of the website, can have an update occasionally, and it's never a bad idea to update those. Outdated plugins or WordPress is probably the most common way that an attacker might be able to gain access to your website and disrupt it. The best practice number 2 for having a secure WordPress website is in the password you choose. So when you first set up a WordPress website, your host, let's just say it's GoDaddy, will say, okay, give us the username and the password you want. And so you can, of course, pick any username you want, but when it comes to the password, you want to make sure it's complex, it has the special symbols in upper and lower case. If it's an easy password, the first thing hackers will try to do is guess the password, and if they guess it right, then they do have access to your website. There's also several plugins out there that will force you to have a very secure password, one of those really long ones that people don't like because you can never remember it. So you can either be diligent and do it yourself, or if you feel like a plugin will help you remember that, then you can get a plugin to help you make sure you have a strong password. Now, in addition to plugins that just simply help make sure you have a strong and random password when you create it, there's other security plugins. Now, I don't think for the majority of small business owners in the call today, they're going to necessarily need the level of security these are offering. But if you're a 100 employee or 1,000 employee business, you have more revenue, more profit, and maybe more at stake. So you would consider investing in a plugin like one of these. Some of the best security plugins include WordPress, Security or Solid Security, and they offer real-time protection against most common threats. They offer a firewall, malware scanning of the file system of your host, and various security hardening practices. Now, I only say these in case you're interested in really knowing what are the most secure plugins to help you with your WordPress website, and these are some of the best. I really don't think they're necessary for many people here, but if you feel like your business needs this level of security, at least these plugins are very easy to install, and they all do have a fee. They have an annual or monthly fee to use, but it can be good in some cases and for some businesses. And the last security practice I would recommend is one that limits login attempts. So as I mentioned, if you have an administrative username and password that you set up, and that password is, well, let's just say it's weak, like 1234566. One of the first things a malicious hacker will try to do is guess these common passwords, and they'll start with the most common and get more and more uncommon as time goes on. But if you allow for unlimited login attempts, they can try indefinitely to guess your password. And interestingly, by default, WordPress doesn't limit the login attempts as many online platforms do nowadays, but there are a couple of plugins that I mentioned right here that you can install, and generally they're even free, that will limit the login attempts to like 3 or 5 per hour. So these are the best practices as you look to build or maintain your WordPress website and just how to keep it secure. I want to clear up some confusion. That's one of the most commonly asked questions I get about WordPress websites, which is what's the difference between WordPress.org and WordPress.com? And they have a similar looking logo, but there's a lot of differences. So with WordPress.org, they give full theme support. So any of the themes you find online from any developer in the world, you can install and use. So that's really nice. WordPress.com limits the number of themes to just a few that they've selected. WordPress.org also allows you to run and install any of the plugins, of which there are thousands that do a lot of really useful things. And WordPress.com doesn't allow for any plugins. As WordPress.org, as I mentioned, you pay the hosting fee and you select your host yourself. WordPress.com is your host. They're the only option. And they do give you a free 3 gigabytes of storage, but if you need more space, you do have to pay more for the hosting fee there. WordPress.org gives you full e-commerce freedom. So with plugins or making the website to fit your business, you can sell anything any way you want. You can sell physical, digital, subscriptions. With WordPress.com, they don't even give you the ability to sell with e-commerce unless you're upgraded to a $45 a month plan. So it gets very expensive. WordPress.org gives you complete branding freedom. There's no logos, there's no disclaimers at the bottom and the footer that you don't want. You set everything yourself. WordPress.com puts their own logo and their own branding on, and you have to pay extra to remove it. WordPress.org gives you all of the search engine optimization features that the internet offers. You can get really, really advanced. And WordPress.com gives you very limited SEO control. And similarly, WordPress.org gives you full analytics, so you can use Google Analytics or Facebook Pixel, if you're familiar with those, or any analytic tool you want, whereas WordPress.com gives you very limited analytics. And on WordPress.org, you do the maintenance, which means, if there's a bug or an update needs to happen with a plugin, you got to click the button to do that. On WordPress.com, they do the maintenance. So stacking these two up, almost everybody here should be looking at WordPress.org, not WordPress.com, simply for the reasons of your business, you're trying to sell products, you need the WordPress.org, what they offer. I think it's confusing how they branded these two, and this is a common question. And I talk to several people a year who've started building a website or built their website on WordPress.com, thinking it was WordPress.org, to find out, oh, they can't install the plugins they want, or they can't install the theme they had in mind. So don't make that mistake. Steer clear of WordPress.com, and WordPress.org is the platform that you should be looking at. So now that you've learned about the competitors and you've now know the difference between WordPress.com and .org, this is the next step is going to be building your website and picking a theme. Now, picking a theme is one of my favorite parts of building a WordPress website because you really get to explore your design, your creativity. And again, you don't need to be a developer to have a beautiful looking website on WordPress. There's several places you can go to get a WordPress theme and to look at the options. The first one is the WordPress official site. They do have some basic themes. They update every year. There's not a great selection, and nor are these themes very feature rich, I would say. They're just pretty bare bones. And I think many businesses will want to look at these other options. The one I like a lot is called Theme Forest. And Theme Forest has thousands of themes, and you can search by category. So if you're a business like a bakery or a hair salon or a auto repair mechanic, you will find themes built for your type of business, which is really cool because there's professional development team has thought about, well, what does this business website need to look like? How's the navigation work? What are the colors supposed to be like, right, for this type of industry? So a lot of the complication has already been solved, and you just get to look through the options that fit your industry and pick the one you like. And similarly, the last option here, ColorLib, also gives great WordPress themes from developers all around the world, and you can search and find the one you want. Now, some are free on the final two sites here. Everything on the official WordPress site is free, but on a Theme Forest and ColorLib, you will find a few free themes, but in general, they're around $20 to $60 for a one-time fee, and it usually is worth it. You know, you can find the ideal theme. It's almost perfect for your business, and all you need to do is tweak it, and so it's a good investment. So after you've picked your theme, you're going to be thinking about how you're going to structure your website. You're going to be thinking about what kind of text you want on your website. And so this is where search engine optimization comes into play. Why does search engine optimization matter? Well, it's the way of writing text on your website, including the headers and the paragraph, the body text, and even the placement of images and stuff. And it will drive traffic to your website and improve its visibility online, which will essentially help you generate more revenue through your online presence. Now, as I mentioned, WordPress is very SEO friendly, but you can, of course, optimize it more as you go and as you build out the website. So let's talk about the four main techniques of having a good SEO on your website, on your initial website. And keep in mind, SEO is something that can always be improved, and there's a lot of advanced measures you can take, but these are the four main ones that you should be looking at. The first factor of giving your website a good SEO score or a good SEO rank is the quality of the content. So what this means is that you're going to have text on your website. Google and Microsoft and other search engines are going to look at all of the text and they're going to say, well, does it have proper grammar? Does it have proper spelling? Is there a good amount of text on each page? I've seen web pages that had like 2 sentences of text on the home page. That's a big red flag to a search engine because they're saying, well, there's not enough text. Or on the other hand, if you have pages and pages of text, that's a red flag to a search engine, and these will give you lower SEO scores. So you want to have a good balance of text and images on each page. And you might be wondering, well, how much text is a good amount? That's a great question. There's a few general guidelines, but it is also industry specific. So part of what you can do is research what your competitors have and just get a feel for how much text you do need. Now, the second technique is to improve the level of user engagement. What this means is that if you have users come to your website and they leave really quickly within about 5 seconds, that indicates to Google or Microsoft or another search engine that you don't have a very high quality website, that it's not interesting or relevant. So you need to encourage people to stay on your website longer by having well-written content, engaging images, or even short videos. Third, Google's going to look at your website and see if it's mobile friendly, because over 60% of website traffic nowadays comes from mobile devices. So if you've built your website on WordPress and you picked a theme that was created within the last 2 or 3 years, then it's most likely going to be completely fine. It's going to be mobile friendly, meaning it's going to resize automatically and everything's going to look good. However, if you have an older WordPress website or indeed any website, it might not be mobile friendly anymore. So that would be a determining factor on that score. And lastly is the number and quality of inbound links to your website. Inbound link simply means another website, not yours, that is linking to yours. So, for example, if your business was mentioned in a local newspaper publication online and that website then linked to your business, that would be a really good inbound link. Or if you have a supplier that links to your website, that would also be considered an inbound link or a link on a social media page. So the more inbound links you have, the more Google and Microsoft say, well, your website is an authority on this subject or in this niche. And so it's going to improve your SEO score. Now, this was just a quick rundown of SEO to give you the basic understanding and the basic tools of which to start building a good SEO and getting a good SEO score on your website. So now I want to focus a little bit more on what is the WordPress experience like? If you're actually using WordPress, how do you do it? Well, this is a screenshot of the WordPress dashboard. And if anybody here has ever used WordPress before, you'll be very familiar with this because you'll spend a whole lot of time looking at this screen and this interface. It hasn't really been changed in 4 or 5 years, which wasn't a bad thing, but it is maybe not as intuitive as Squarespace or Wix and how you navigate and build a website there. But this is part of the learning curve of WordPress, and really, in 2 or 3 hours, if you play around with it, you will become familiar enough with the main components to be confident in building and launching a website. And that's what I'm going to talk about right here, or what are the main pages you need to use and to be familiar with. The most important items in order are going to be the media page, where you store your images and upload images and even videos. The pages section, where you will see the different pages and edit them on your website. The appearance tab, where you'll have some options to change things like uploading a different theme and changing a few options with the appearance of the website. The plugins, where you will search for, install, and change the settings on any plugins you have installed on the website. The users tab, where you can add and remove additional users to help you work on the website. And finally, the settings. Now, each of these do need to be properly set up before you can launch your website. There's going to be other items here on the left-hand menu, but these are the critical ones, and some of the other ones are never going to be really necessary to look at. So first, I want to talk a little bit about the Media tab. This is where you store media for the website. So if you want any image to be on the website, you first will add it to Media. I'll show you in a live demo how to exactly do this. It's pretty easy. There's just a button at the top that says Add New. You'll pick your picture or pictures and upload them, and then they'll be displayed here. And once they're here, they're ready to be put on your website. The next section of the WordPress dashboard you'll spend a lot of time looking at is the pages, the page management section. This is where you'll add a new page, edit the content of an existing page, delete a page, maybe you want to duplicate a page. Those are all things that you'll do here, and you see each of the pages of your website will be listed, and you can edit them each individually. The next section that's important is the appearance section. Here you'll be able to see what theme you have installed or running, and you'll also be able to install new themes that you find either in the WordPress theme store or one of the other ones I mentioned, like Theme Forest. You'll be able to upload and install that here through Appearance and the Themes section. The next section is the plugin section. This is where you manage your plugins. You'll see any plugins with updates will have this little beige notification. It'll say there's an update available, and I'll talk about that in a moment. It's always a good idea to update plugins because what they're doing is that if Android or Apple has released new operating system version for their phones, then plugins, they need to sometimes update the code to be compatible, to be secure, and for other reasons, to make it a good experience. So if you don't update your plugins in WordPress, what can happen in a year or so is that they might stop working or they might work strangely. So it's very rare updating a plugin will ever cause a problem. In my experience, 99.9% of the time, updating a plugin is just fine. If, however, you update a plugin and it does break something, you can always go back to the last version. So I always recommend you will click the update option when you have updates for plugins or for WordPress. The next important section is the user management. And on this screen, you'll have your primary administrative user login, which you will create with your host generally. And you can also add new users for free, and they can all have different roles if you want. So they can either be an editor of a page or a full administrator if they're like a website developer, and it depends on what they need to do, and you can give them different levels of access. So it's very nice and a good way to secure your WordPress website because you never want to share your administrative username and password with somebody else if they're working on your website. It's always a good idea to create their own login. So it keeps a record of what they've done. And also when they're done working for you, you can just simply remove their login and they no longer have access. And lastly are the general settings. These will just be something you need to set once and then you kind of forget about it. Things like your site title and a tagline, which are important for SEO purposes to get the words right. You can line up those keywords with what people are searching for to help your SEO score. And a few other settings you can just look at and make sure they look good and save the changes. You generally don't need to come back into these settings after you've confirmed they're correct. Now, one thing I want to touch on briefly is e-commerce. Now, most of you will be selling e-commerce on your websites, I assume. And by default, WordPress it doesn't have e-commerce enabled, but for that you get a plugin. The most popular plugin for e-commerce on WordPress websites is called WooCommerce. It's one I've used dozens of times. Many small business owners in Virginia use WooCommerce, and it is really the go-to option for e-commerce nowadays on WordPress websites. So it's really powerful and customizable. You can sell your physical products, your digital products. You can offer local pickup. You can offer shipping rates. Everything is customizable and it's a plugin that's built into WordPress once you enable it and install the WooCommerce plugin. So it's integrated with WordPress very nicely. It provides the shopping cart experience, so the checkout pages, the order confirmation page, and everything to do with e-commerce. And it really does walk you through how to sell for e-commerce, including, if you have a business bank account, you can put in that information on the screen in WooCommerce so the money can be sent to you and you take the credit card payments on the website. So it's a very simple yet powerful plugin for enabling e-commerce. It's so easy to set up. There's just a few steps. There's a few settings that you'll set up, like your company name and address. Step number 2, you'll choose your payment gateway. So this just means who do you want to process the credit card transactions on your website? All right, there's different options. You can use Stripe, you can use PayPal. There's other options. There's banks that will do this. And so you might have a preference, or you might just go with one of the default options like Stripe or PayPal. They offer very competitive rates, so it doesn't make a huge difference generally who is going to process the credit card payments on your website. And you can do things like configuring different shipping methods based on weight or other factors. You can set the rules and get the shipping set up just how you need. So WooCommerce is very powerful and very easy for e-commerce. Once you've set up the basic WooCommerce settings on the last screen, you'll be able to add products. Adding products is as simple as typing in a product name in the box up above, and then in the box below, you can then type that product description and add some photos or video of it, whatever you need. And you can set down below things like the price, the sale price. You can say the quantity you have if you'd like to do that. And you click publish. And as soon as you do, then the product is live on your website and your e-commerce store and people can buy it. So that was just a quick look at e-commerce in WordPress. But if you do have more questions about how to set that up or anything to do with e-commerce, please let me know. And so that ends the presentation part of the session today. But what I want to do next is jump over to a live demo website. And I'm going to show you as I actually navigate around this site, looking at the same screens we just reviewed, how they all work. So the first tab we'll be looking at is the Media tab. As I go into Media tab, we'll see here all of the images that came with the theme for this website. In this case, it looks like it was like a play theme, opera, or you know, theater theme maybe. So all of these images are just were the default ones. You can leave them here. You can delete them if you'd like. It doesn't really matter. You're generally not going to run out of room for image storage. To add a new image, you just go up to the top and click on Add New Media File, and you can drag and drop in your images. Generally, they're going to be a JPEG format or maybe a PNG format are the two most common. And you'll notice here that it says maximum upload file size on this particular host is 2 gigabytes. You might have a different maximum file size. You might be less than 2 gigabytes. But that's just showing you that you can't upload probably a video bigger than 2 gigabytes. Keep in mind, if you're going to be uploading images to your website, you want to make sure they're as small as possible. If you take images with a smartphone, you might notice that they're 5 megabytes or 10 megabytes in size. That is a very large size to put on a website. It can load very slowly if someone has a slower internet connection or they're on a mobile device with a weak signal. So I would recommend you definitely optimize those images for size before you upload them here. So if you have a collection of images already prepared for your website, you can just Google for free online image compression tool. And there's many options out there where you will upload a big image like 10 megabytes, and it'll say, what's the target file size? And I recommend between 100 and 200 kilobytes for a website. So much smaller than 10 megabytes, but you won't really see much of a difference in quality. But it will ensure your website loads fast, and that is actually another determining factor in giving you a good SEO score is how fast the pages load. So make sure before you upload anything here, you optimize for size. And unfortunately, WordPress doesn't have a built-in mechanism to do that. That would be really nice if they did. There are plugins you can use to do that, but generally I will just search for free online image compression tool and pick an option and get those images compressed and then upload them here. The next section that's very important and you'll be looking at a lot is the pages. And here you see I have on this demo site 5 different pages. Now, not all of them are even in use, and that's fine because your theme that you get might come with 5, that might come with 10 or 20 different pages. And these are just options. They're different layouts. And so if you want a page to host if you want a layout to host a certain page of your website, you can pick the one you like the most and then edit the text and the images from there. They're just options. And so you don't need to delete them if you're not using them. It's fine to have a lot of pages here. In fact, you probably will. So once you find a page, there's a few ways to edit it. Now, if you have the Elementor plugin, and maybe that came pre-installed with your theme, and like I said, it's in about 50% of themes. You will then have in the row here next to Edit, Quick Edit, Trash, and View, you'll have an option that says Edit with Elementor. Now, if you have that option, I would definitely use it. Elementor, like I said, is a great editing interface. But if you just have the basics, like I have in this demo website, that's fine. What you're going to want to do is click on the Edit button. And here we are pulling up the home page to edit. Now, whether or not you're using the default WordPress editor like I am here, or the more fancy Elementor editor, the process is going to be very similar to edit your page. And these are called WYSIWYG editors, which stands for what you see is what you get. And essentially, everything here I can change, and when I save it, it is put into effect on the main website. So for example, if I wanted to add some more text, I can just simply type it like this. And anything I type here, I'll see how it kind of realigns the spacing. Maybe I decide, oh, it's a bit too much text there, so I'm going to reduce some, and see that now changes the spacing, and I might decide that looks better with the element on the left. So you can go through and you can change the spacing, you can change the text, you can add and remove images. Adding and removing an image is very simple. You just click on an image that's here, and these will probably be the default images. And there you can just select the option. You can delete an image. You can select a new image to put there, and there's other options. And so generally you want to just edit the website template that you get. And if you're beginning off on WordPress, and not try to start adding elements, because when you start adding elements like a new image or a new text section, you could inadvertently kind of mess up the formatting and the layout. So I'd recommend you would only stick to editing the placements of items that are already here and not adding your own. But if worse comes to worse, you really need to add your own. It's possible. You might just need to spend a little bit more time on it if you accidentally put it in a weird place and the website then looks funny. You have to go back and undo it and kind of troubleshoot a bit. But if you just stick to editing the text and the images of the template and where they give it to you, it is so easy. You just change it here, and then you can click the Save button in the upper right-hand corner, and then those changes will be made effective to the wider internet. In this case, I won't save any of the changes, so I'll just say I'll leave without saving these changes. So editing the content of any page is as simple as that. You either click Edit, or if you have Edit with Elementor, you can click that instead. And you can pull up that editing interface, and remember just to click Save when you're done. The next tab we'll look at is the Appearance tab. The main thing you'll be doing in the Appearance tab is installing or activating your theme. So if you find a theme from the website themeforest.net and you really love it, you might buy it. Let's say it was $20 or $30. When you do that, they're going to give you a zip file. And that zip file is going to contain all the pages, all of the example content like the images. And what you'll do with it is you'll click on the button here at the top that says Add New Theme. And if you want to then browse like I said, the included WordPress themes, they're all here. Some of them are, passable, but generally they're not very feature rich. So you'll find your website theme elsewhere. But if you have that zip file that you paid for, you click Upload Theme. And then it says here, if you have the zip file, you just drag it here or click Choose File. And then it'll upload, and then you'll click Install. And it's as easy as that. And then you'll have, under the Pages section, go back to Pages, it'll immediately be populated with all of the pages from that theme, including all of their content, and you're ready to go editing it. The next section we'll talk about is the User section. So here you can see there's a default user. There's always going to be one. This is going to be yours when you first create the website and sign up for the hosting plan. You'll have picked your password. You will always be an administrator, which means you have full access to the whole website. To add a new user, you just click the button of Add New User. You have to give them a username and type in an email. Typically, to keep it simple, I just make the username the actual email itself, and they can be the same, that's fine. And you can pick a password or type in your own here. And lastly, you can pick, and you don't need to put in the names of the person unless you want to. You can select the role. So again, administrator is like you. It means they can do everything. Most likely, if you have somebody just editing content of a page, it would be an editor, right? So you wouldn't want to give them administrative access because then they could install plugins or change settings. So you give them the level of access you want and click Add New User. And all the users you add here are free, and that's always a feature of WordPress. And the last thing we'll look at are the settings, is the settings menu here. And these settings are more foundational to your website than the theme is. So these settings will persist even if you change themes, even if you edit pages. These are the most foundational part of WordPress. So you want to type in your title. This was your business name. You can type in a tagline. And again, these words are important for your SEO. They're very important. So if you are in the business of maybe pet care, maybe you're a dog walker, you're starting a business as a dog walker, you're going to want to think about, well, what are the search terms people put in when they're finding your type of service or a product? That's what your tagline can probably be. And of course, your business name should also be close to that, ideally. You will also be able to change things like the administrative email address. So if you have a contact form, and that contact form, once it's submitted or sent, it will go to this email address. So it can be you, it can be someone else you want to get the contact form, you can choose. And then there's a few other little things here to check, like the date format, the time format, what time zone you're in, things like that. Make sure they're set correctly. Sometimes they'll be off a little bit, just depending on your host and what they decide they think is right. So make sure they're all right. And when you're done, click Save Changes at the bottom. You only really ever need to do this once, so you can just go into there once and set it and forget about it. So hopefully now you have a better idea of how to manage a WordPress website. What are some of the implications and complexities of setting it up? And indeed, if you are even better suited for one of those competitive platforms, as I mentioned, just depending on your unique business needs. But I'd be happy now to dive into your questions, and we can get through as many of those as we have time for today. And I do appreciate everybody being here and hope this was useful information.
Thank you, Cameron. We do have a couple questions. The first question is PNG better than JPEG for images?
Oh, that's a great question. So I briefly mentioned JPEG and PNG. These are the two image file format types that are most common online. Now, the big advantage of PNG is that it can have transparent backgrounds. So if you have a website and you have your business logo and you want it to have a transparent background, so the background of the page kind of shows, seamlessly behind the logo and there's not like an awkward box around it, you need to use the PNG file format type because JPEG doesn't allow for the transparencies. JPEG is best overall for other things, though, for just general pictures, because it's a smaller file size. So the same file size, the same image would be smaller with a JPEG. So my recommendation is always use JPEG unless you need it to be transparent, in which case you'll use the PNG file format type.
Let's see, is there any easy, simple CRM system to write notes and schedules, past orders, etc.? Something.
Yeah, so CRM systems are, a related part of your online strategy to your website. It's definitely not something that's covered in this presentation because there's a lot of complexity and a lot of nuances to setting up a CRM system. So I feel like the question of that broad scope is not going to be possible to answer here. But if you had a specific question of a certain feature you needed, I might be able to give a recommendation of a CRM system if you had a bit more detail.
Okay, great. Thank you. How do I change out a header on a page?
Yeah, good question. So we're still looking at the page menu here. So let's go to the contact page. To change out the header, essentially I'll click on Quick Edit as the easiest way in WordPress. And here you see the title. So I think what you're referring to is the title. So if you don't want it to say contact at the top of the browser window, you want it to say contact us. You'll just simply change that here like that. Now, the slug here is an interesting thing to consider. This is read by the search engines. And so if you want to have the search engines see not just contact, but contact us, you could do an underscore and put us. One thing to keep in mind is with the slug, which is what appears in the URL at the top of the browser, this is read by search engines and it doesn't impact your SEO. You cannot have spaces. And so always use an underscore like that or a dash, but generally an underscore is the most common practice. So you would change the title and you would maybe update the slug if you feel like it's necessary and then click the update button. And then the page will now be officially called Contact Us. So that's the easiest way to change it.
Let's see, next question. Would you liken these features of WordPress and Elementor to an all-encompassing software like Go High Level? Would you recommend building the site on WordPress directly or on Go High Level?
So I haven't heard of Go High Level. It's not a platform I'm familiar with. So I guess I don't really have an answer to that question.
Let's see. Is it bad to have more than one payment plugin? I have PayPal and Authorize. Should I just have one that would accept multiple payment types?
So if you have an existing WordPress website and you have two different payment processors, Authorize.net and PayPal, for example, I don't see that there's an intrinsic problem with that, but there's probably not a benefit either. I don't know why there would have been two set up. because then you have just multiple logins and multiple companies you're dealing with. So it adds a bit of complexity. I don't think it has any downfall technologically speaking, but just as far as managing and administering your website, it'd be simpler with one. So if you're happy with the setup, I don't see a problem with it. But if you want to simplify and kind of optimize and streamline, then I would try to focus on just one of those two. And I think Authorize.net is more of a legacy processor, meaning they've been around 20 years or longer, well before e-commerce was a thing. So PayPal and Stripe are more of an advanced and modern type of processor. So you might find that they're just easier to work with in this scenario.
Okay, we have a question that was actually a follow-up to the changing out of the header. Our attendee is saying, on changing out the header, I am referring to the photo used at the top of the page. I want to change out that image. I've tried doing it through Appearance, but it did not work.
So that's a good question. So the header image on a page, so a lot of pages will have, and I'll show you here, a lot of pages will have an image up at the top, like this one of me. Every website theme is going to have kind of a different way that you modify that. Sometimes you'll just hover over it and click and say change image. Sometimes it'll be buried in a settings menu, which could be, again, yeah, under appearance, you said you looked there. And I think this is one of the challenges of a first-time builder in WordPress is learning where to go to modify certain elements. It seems like it should be simple, but some developers have chosen to make it a different path to edit it. And so I don't have an answer directly because there's many different options of how you might change that, like I said. But one thing I always recommend is that if you bought that theme on a website, there's usually a developer contact and they would be available to answer questions. And if I don't know where to change something on a WordPress website I've seen for the first time, I will email them and just ask specific questions that just generally tell you exactly what you need to do. Sometimes they'll even record a little video walkthrough and talk you through how to change it. So I would recommend just contacting the developer and asking those questions. And it's probably you'll have several questions like that as you change and build a WordPress website. So it's good to be on good terms with that developer, and usually they're very responsive.
Is there a plugin for WordPress to add a Calendly link?
That's a good question. I'm not sure. I know Calendly is the link scheduler platform, and I haven't actually ever seen a plugin for Calendly on WordPress, but it wouldn't surprise me if it was there because they're two very popular platforms. So you could just go into, in fact, we can do it here. It'd be a good example of how you search for a plugin. So you go to the plugin section. Here you'll see the plugins that are on this website. And as I mentioned before, if there's this orange banner, it means there's an update. So I should go in here and click update on these pretty soon. But if you want to search for a new plugin, you can click the button at the top that says add new plugin. And this is like the plugin store. And consider this like the app store on your phone, where there are many, many, many plugins here, just thousands and thousands. But if you're searching for a specific one, you can type it in. Not sure how to spell Calendly.
I think it's Calendly.
Yeah, I don't use that one myself.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, if I could figure out how to spell it. There it is. So with the correct spelling, I'll put it in the search and it will look for plugins. Okay. So what do we have here? We have multiple plugins. Now, interestingly, I don't see one that's official because here it says by, and there's a developer here. So you see these there by different developers. It would say by Calendly if it was an official one. So these are, yeah, even this one. These are third-party plugins that incorporate or interact with Calendly in some way. To see what they actually do, you can click on the button here that says more details. And here this developer is saying what this plugin does. It says this is the easiest way to integrate your Calendly scheduling pages to the WordPress website. So that sounds like the question you had. Now, I haven't used this one personally, so I couldn't really recommend it. But I always suggest that you would look at the ratings, and see what other people have said. Like with any app or any software platform, look at the ratings and see what people are saying. In this case, there's a lot of 5-star ratings here, and you can look at the details. So probably this would be my go-to option for integrating. Without having prior experience with it, of course, it looks like it has good reviews. It has 20,000 installations, right? Compared to this one with only 2,000. So I'd always recommend going one with the highest number of installations and, of course, the highest number of positive reviews. So in this case, it looks like it's probably this one. So you could start there. Again, keep in mind, if you install it and it's not doing exactly what you need to, there's really no harm in it. You can usually just remove it and you could pick another option and see if that one worked better. But that's a good question. Thanks. And it gave me the ability to show how to find plugins.
Yeah, thank you for that demo. That was good. Let's see, next question. How important is having API or white label pages to a small business that provides services like a chiropractic practice?
So that's a good question about kind of your site structure and your approach of how your website really communicates your value proposition to your target market. So some businesses will really benefit from having like white papers or data sheets. In this case, it's for a chiropractic business. So I'm not sure what your white papers would contain, but maybe they're kind of your strategy or methods or case studies or things like that. I think most businesses benefit from having more data about their results on the website. You could have a website I worked on recently. We took the blog section of WordPress and just converted it into a case studies. So it was very easy to, like, instead of creating a new blog post, you created a new case studies page because this client had a lot of case studies. So you can definitely get creative with how you want to display things like white papers or case studies. And it all just depends on kind of the theme you pick and what layouts they give you and what you want the end result to look like.
Let's see, next question. I have a WordPress website, but I also use Square as my payment processing system. So I have two different systems. Can I integrate the Square system on my website itself?
So Square is one of the big payment processors like PayPal. And if you're using WooCommerce, like I mentioned, that plugin WooCommerce on your WordPress website, one of the options with WooCommerce is to use Square. Square, Stripe, and PayPal are generally the big three ones. So yes, it's definitely possible to integrate that onto your website. And I would consider that you would do that through the WooCommerce plugin because WooCommerce will use them as a credit card processor and then deposit the funds in your bank account. And they are the solution that provides the interface, like the checkout page and the shopping cart page on your actual website. So you start with installing WooCommerce and then you can log into your account from there.
So the next question is, when it comes to getting email subscription signups, is there a specific platform you would suggest? I am currently using MailChimp and have embedded it into the website, but it doesn't look the most official. Wondering what you would suggest for having people sign up for email subscriptions on the website.
Oh, it's a great question. MailChimp is, in fact, the one that I do recommend the most. It seems to be the simplest and very inexpensive or free to some people. But if you're not happy with the actual visual layout of the boxes that MailChimp puts on the website, I assume in your footer for the newsletter sign up, then there are options to customize it. It does require coding, but you can either yourself or hire a freelancer just to customize the look of every element of those boxes. So it is completely up to you or someone with the knowledge to do that. Because MailChimp is my go-to recommendation, I would recommend you, if your only hesitation is the look of the boxes or maybe the colors that they have, I would look into tweaking those to get them perfect because I think they're the best platform overall for small businesses. And I don't have a recommendation I would recommend over them for someone in your situation.
Okay, we currently don't have any other questions, so I'm going to put out an encouraging word to drop some more questions. And if you have them while we have Cameron on with us, we still have over 20 minutes, so we can pick Cameron's brain. So if there are any questions, and while we wait, Cameron, do you have any, extra powerful words of wisdom?
Yeah, well, thanks. Well, great question so far. And yes, I think that everybody's on the right track thinking about the different considerations. You know, there's images, there's contact forms. There is a lot of things to learn when building your first website. A common question I get, are there video tutorials or guides that are good to help me learn more, right? Because you might have learned a little bit today, but there's still a lot you don't know. And I like to just go to YouTube and I would search for, WordPress website building for beginners. Find a video that's been launched within the last 3 or 4 months, because older videos, as the interface changes, little tweaks are made here and there, you don't want to find something that's too outdated. It won't be helpful. So find a video that has a lot of views, that's within a few months old, and there's a ton of content out there, right? Really good content. You can even ask specific questions that you have on, and you'll probably find answers out there. So think of that as a good resource to further your knowledge and education of WordPress as you go down this journey.
So next question, we actually had some more questions come in. How do you implement updates which would make your website compliant with ADA? I think they wanted to know in an economical way.
Right. So the Americans with disability, that's an interesting question, so there's certain ADA website things that are nice to have. One of those would be a button or a feature on your website that speaks the text of the website to people who can't see. And there's other ADA features of websites. In some industries, like the medical industry or others, I do believe having ADA compliant websites is like a regulation. In some industries, it's just a nice to have, right? So if you think some of your customers might need special, things because they have disabilities to interact with your website, then it is best to research, what in your industry are the most common ADA things to have on a website. Because if you're a bakery or a dog walker, you're going to have different things that you would focus on for making sure people with disabilities can still interact with your website and still hopefully become customers of your business. So I would just start with the research and see what you need. Every solution would be different. So there's plugins to help read text on your website to people who can't read. And there's going to be plugins for many ADA type of scenarios. But in my experience, there's not one plugin that will fit everything. So it's best to do your research first and really identify, oh, this is the feature, or these are the couple of features that I need to have to make sure that my customers are going to have a good experience on the website. And then you can look for plugins that will enable those.
Our attendees also, the business is an IT services website, and they're also asking about Section 508 compliance assistance.
I'm not familiar with Section 508, actually. Yeah.
So this might be just a question to send to the help@virginiasbdc.org, and we'll get you in contact with Cameron and see if we can't get you some more help there. Let's see. Next question. When I look for a new plugin, I've noticed there are very few reviews on the WooCommerce plugins. Why is that if it's so popular?
Well, I think, let's take a look, because the WooCommerce plugin is here. It's in the top left, and it has a lot of reviews. It has 4,600 reviews and 7 million installations. So, I think you might have been looking at something else. There's certainly a lot of third-party developers. Look down this huge list. If I search for WooCommerce, I believe there's 278 results, it's telling me. So WooCommerce itself, the core plugin, the only one you probably need to care about is this one right here. And it has a lot of reviews, and they're generally very positive. So there's a lot of other third-party plugins that have WooCommerce in the name, so you might have been looking at one of those.
Thanks for looking that up. Let's see. WordPress says not to use them for e-commerce purposes. Is it true?
Not to use who? WooCommerce? Or
the question says WordPress says not to use them for e-commerce purposes. Is it true? So I'm not exactly.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Maybe they could clarify what they're asking.
Praveer, if you could elaborate on that question, please. Let's see. Excuse me. Next question. When it comes to AI translating the site into different languages, does a plugin need to be installed, or will it automatically translate for a customer?
That's a great question. It won't automatically translate, but WordPress has the infrastructure to allow the AI translation plugin to work seamlessly. There's actually a lot of different plugins now. Every month there's new AI type of plugins in WooCommerce and even those that are translating. So while I haven't looked at that in a couple of months, I don't have an up-to-date recommendation, but you can just search for an AI language translation and then again look for the plugin that has a lot of installs, a lot of positive reviews. And generally, they're very, very good. They're better than the kind of the Google Translate method that websites used 4 or 5 years ago. AI is much more advanced in getting natural language translations. So you should find one that works really well for you.
No other questions right now. We don't have, I haven't heard back anymore on that previous question. We still have 15 minutes or so. So, oh, here we go. WordPress says that if you have a business with e-commerce transactions, they do not prefer you to use WordPress.
Was the question that WordPress prefers you not to use WordPress?
Not to use them for e-commerce purposes. So according to this, the WordPress is saying that if you have a business with e-commerce transactions, they do not prefer you to use WordPress.
Well,
As she said, or they said they saw this on the website.
Yeah, I haven't heard that before, but I do know there's a lot of businesses that use WordPress and e-commerce and it works fine. So I wouldn't worry about that.
Yeah, agree. Okay, do we have any other questions while we have Cameron here live? Let's see. So this is going back to the ADA. We currently have a developer working on our website to make it compliant with ADA and Section 508. Any guidelines how to deal with the developer?
Because I'm not, I mean, I'm a little familiar with ADA, but not the 508. So I think it'd be better if you wanted to ask and get into a deeper conversation about that. We could talk offline about it. As mentioned before, the email address here, help@virginiasbdc.org. If you want to send an email there, we'll get it. And then you can just mention you'd like to talk to me about your question following this presentation. I'll be happy to see if I can provide more information, but just off the top of my head, without doing research, I don't have a better answer for you.
Right, great. Let's see. This was a follow-up to an earlier question. I'm going to read what it says here and let me know. You can tell me if you need me to go back and reference the question before. It was, I meant additional plugins like a better search feature, taxes, shipping, etc. I was told too many Woo plugins will slow the site down, so I try to choose the best ones. Let me go back and see if I can find the original question on that.
No, I think it was about WordPress is not recommending WooCommerce.
Actually, I think it was. It looks like it was. Is it bad to have more than one payment plugin? Because Jennifer.
Oh, authorized.net versus.
Oh wait, sorry. It was. She had a follow up. So when I look for a new plugin, I've noticed there are very few reviews on the WooCommerce plugins. Why is that since it's so popular? And she followed up with, I meant additional plugins like a better search feature, taxes, shipping, etc. I was told too many Woo plugins will slow the site down, so I try to choose the best ones.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
So yeah, it does make sense. So that question is, if you're looking at WooCommerce, this one here, this is the main WooCommerce. It's going to give you everything to sell your products online, like I mentioned. There are add-ins. So if you want to, again, if you want to sell subscriptions with WooCommerce, that's not something that they offer with the base package. That is an add-on. You do pay for that. So I think the question is, some of these add-ons like the monthly subscription, has a low number of reviews. That's possible. I mean, there's a lot of add-ons for WooCommerce, I believe both officially from the company itself. And I would also think unofficially from third-party developers. So, it's a bit of a complex question. If you need a plugin, then generally speaking, read the reviews and try it out. If it doesn't work, you can always uninstall it. But generally, yes, having fewer plugins is better. So So I've seen some WordPress websites that had 30 or 40 plugins. And if you look at my example site here, there's about 5. So fewer plugins is better because each plugin is running code on your website host, your server. And this code is, doing the function that the plugin's doing, but it is also increasing the kind of complexity of the website. If you have 30 or 40 plugins, it could very well make the website slow to load, slow to navigate. There's no right or wrong answer of how many plugins is minimum or maximum. It does depend. So the more plugins, the more risk you introduce of having something that will slow down your website. So I'll just say that that's kind of the overall guidance that I can always give. Don't install plugins unnecessarily. And if you install a plugin, you should test your website. If you see it acting oddly or slowly, then you would maybe uninstall the plugin or at least contact the developer and say, this is what I've seen. Is there a solution if you really need to keep the plugin? Most plugins don't have the problem, but maybe 1 in 50 websites I see on WordPress, they have some slowdowns due to excessive plugins.
We have another question. How does WooCommerce work for international sales, such as currency changes and showing how much something will be charged? If I sold in Europe, would it set the euros automatically, or is there a separate page per country or currency?
That's a great question. And I haven't dived into WooCommerce international shipping for probably a year. So I don't really have an up-to-date answer on that. I do believe that they do pretty much everything in the e-commerce ecosystems. They probably do an automatic currency conversion, but how exactly they handle that and exactly what rates they give you, I don't have up-to-date information. So I would just do a Google search for WooCommerce international sales or international conversion, and you'll get to their website and they'll tell you currently how they're handling that. But I do believe they do all of that.
Great. That is all the questions we have. So final words of wisdom, Cameron, before I close this
Thanks.
out.
Yeah, thanks everybody. Great questions, and hope to see you at the next session on mobile apps for your business. It should be very good and some good information if you are thinking about developing a mobile app.
Great. Cameron, thank you so much. And thank you all for attending. As a reminder, you will all receive an email with a link to the recording and to the slides. If you would like to sign up for upcoming webinars or access recorded webinars, please visit virginiasbdc.org/training. This webinar and other SBD resources are designed to be used in collaboration with your local SBDC advisors. You can sign up for a free and confidential session by emailing help@virginiasbdc.org or via our website. And as Cameron said, we hope to see you at our next session. Take care, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.